Broadcasting live. It's America's longest running talk show on computers. It's Computer America, bringing you the biggest names in technology with guest interviews, new products, and your emails. Listen live at computeramerica.com on any device around the world. Email the show at live@computeramerica.com or find us on social media. Be sure to check out our website for contests, giveaways, show notes, live video stream, podcasts, and more. You're listening to Computer America.
Hello and welcome into the Computer America Show. We are the nation's longest running, nationally syndicated radio talk show on computers and technology. Thank you for joining us, everyone. Hi, I'm your host, Ben.
And I'm your co-host, Carissa.
Perfect. And everyone, hey, welcome into today's program, where today on the show we have the one, the only, Mr. Dariush Derakhshani. He'll be joining us here in just a moment as we talk all about, the latest in hardware, the latest in graphics. Obviously, since he has last been on, we're talking, since last month, we've had 2 new consoles released. We've had an entire new, really architecture, you could kind of call it, for Apple with their whole M1 kind of deal. We're also going to be talking about, with the holidays, looking into important decisions that one has to make when they're shopping for new monitors or televisions or things like that. It's going to be a nice rounded episode as we talk all things, kind of graphics and hardware. It's going to be fun. So everyone, before we get started, first things first, computeramerica.com. That's where you'll find everything, including past shows, future shows, all the shows, and you can find that very, very simple at our website. While you're there, be sure to check out the podcast, check out the articles, reviews, show notes, social media links, anything that we do here on the program, you can find it there for sure. And I think the last thing I will kind of announce is, of course, next week, November 23rd through the 28th, obviously, Thanksgiving is the 26th, I think. Oh, and by the 23rd through the 27th. No new Computer America. We'll be back the following week, Monday, November 30th, and then of course we'll be good to go from there. But that entire week we'll be doing best of Computer Americas, and yeah, we hope you don't miss us too much. So, with that being said, everyone, before we get started, Carissa, how you doing?
Pretty okay. How are you?
Pretty good. And it's feels like a Wednesday, so you know what? We're going to treat it like a Wednesday. So everyone, we hope that you are relaxed, you're ready for this, and hey, why don't we go ahead and bring on our guest and get things started. So, as I said before, he's a longtime Computer America correspondent now. He has had numerous jobs within the industry when it comes to CGI, and of course he teaches us as well as his day job. And hey, he definitely he's definitely been here for a long time, knows his stuff, and we certainly appreciate him lending his expertise when it comes to just about everything, kind of graphics. So, and of course, hey, let's just face it, since Dariush has been on the show, we've seen the rise of everything from the re-rise or risen again of AMD. We've seen the rise of computer-generated people. We've seen so much innovation since he's been on that it's these are almost like scary dystopian segments sometimes, but it's always a lot of fun. Dariush, welcome back onto the program. How you doing?
Hey, I'm good. I'd like to take credit for all those things that came up since I've been on the show.
It was your fault.
All because of me.
Yes.
Absolutely, I believe it.
Absolutely, yeah.
Not quite, but Dariush, so how are you?
Good. Just gearing up for holiday season, trying to figure out if I want to upgrade my computer this year or wait till next year, and age-old questions.
Yeah, and of course, we have a lot to talk about, but I got to say that I'm kind of in the same boat. I mean, my hardware is thankfully still good enough. It's about 2 years old now, but there's not too much innovation. Everything's like 40% slower than all the new stuff, but that's not really enough to kind of push me overboard. I don't know if you're anything like me, but Intel, they have to pick it up because I want to upgrade, but man, not yet.
Yeah, I mean the only thing right now is the PCI for the bigger bandwidth, the new motherboards with the 12 series that are imminent, the 1200K or the 1200 series chips. That would be nice to take a look at. I think I'm on yeah, exactly. The Gen 4 PCIe would be good because recently I've been having a lot of instabilities running Maya and Zoom when I'm doing my classes. And I discovered that I had my video card set up wrong with a SATA RAID card eating up some of my PCI bandwidth and some BIOS things. I ended up doing a complete Windows reinstall just to shake all the bugs out. And during that time, I figured, maybe I need a little bit more lanes. And so Gen 4 looks kind of promising, but I don't know. Like you said, I don't know if it's time yet or not.
And I will admit that I'm pretty solid on most of the foundations when it comes to hardware, PCIe lanes and that kind of thing. That's always been a huge selling point for, I guess, AMD when it came to their CPUs, especially over Intel, and of course, utilizing the motherboards. And that's always been a criticism of Intel, is that they've stuck to, it's like 8-lane or something like that, whereas what is it? AMD gave you like 64 or like some ridiculous amount compared to Intel. I've never been the most firm on what exactly PCIe slots do, but if you wouldn't mind, just playing teacher again real quick.
Oh yeah, sure. The PCI lanes, that's basically the pathway around the motherboard to the CPU. When you're putting in your cards, the more PCI lanes that you've got, the more bandwidth, the faster the information is going to flow, essentially. And most motherboards that are the Z490s, what I've got right now, only has so many. SATA uses the same lanes as add-in cards, so I had to disable 2 of my SATA ports to be able to get full speed. If you have, I think my motherboard has 3 PCI 16X lanes. I've got a Quadro Nvidia graphics card that's 16 lane in one slot, but I had a 10 gigabit Ethernet card in the other slot because I only have 3 16s and then I think 3 1s.
Right.
So it's either 1 or 16. And, reading the fine print in my motherboard manual, I discovered that if you plug in anything into that second slot for your 16X, it throttles both of them down to 8, thinking that you're using 2 video cards. And then furthermore, I discovered if I have anything in my third X16 slot, that also cuts down the bandwidth and gets rid of 2 of my SATA ports. So, I had to move a lot of data, get rid of a couple of hard drives and sort of consolidate and move my 10 gig card to that slot and free up that sort of thing. And that helped stability a little bit. And then a week later, I decided I'm just going to do a complete Windows reinstall, like from scratch, reformat and everything, and that's made a huge difference.
Yeah, sometimes you have to do that. I'm kind of wondering, what does the average, how many of those parts does the average person have in their standard computer? How much upgrade do you have in that particular machine?
I think standard, not a whole lot. Most motherboards will have a 1 gigabit Ethernet port or 2 on there.
Oh, and you've got 10. Wow.
Yeah, and I've got a 10 gigabit because I've got a NAS in my closet over there, and that I upgraded with 10 gigabit as well. So my work files can flow back and forth, and it's got actually an SSD cache in the NAS as well. So at its fastest, I get about 700 to 800 megabytes per second off my network when the cache is engaged. When it's not, more like 350 megabytes per second, which is almost 4 times the speed I get from regular gigabit.
Wow.
So I wanted to throw a card in there, but they don't have 1x 10 gigabit cards.
Yeah.
It's got to be at least 4x. And so I ended up doing a lot of rabbit hole research on what all this means and doing it up right. And now I think my sights are maybe going to be set on a workstation board next year as opposed to a good gaming board. But PCI lanes are going to be something I'm going to look into. Hopefully have onboard 10 gigabit already, so I don't have to worry about this card. So I don't know. It's
I was just looking,
waiting to see speeds.
Yeah, and and what I was talking about with obviously your motherboard has to has to be able to handle this, but also your processor, which is found this thing. It's from like last year, so it might not. It might not have the latest processors, but it's talking about the different CPUs out there and how much of the PCIe lanes. And no problem. But the autoplay videos, they get you the PCIe lanes and the AMD. Like I said, Intel on like their i5 and i7s will give you like 16, and then of course their hyper-threaded ones will go all the way up to 44. But then AMD will give you like 64. So I guess all that means though is that hey, if you wanted to add a second graphics card, which would take up 2 16s, that would be almost all of your PCIe lanes in. With an Intel, but with AMD, you'd have many to spare for other processes.
Yeah, you want to be careful. Look at your motherboard, read the fine print, check the specs out before you jump into it.
Right.
Because, like I said, with mine, I've got a really expensive, nice Asus gaming motherboard, and I was a little surprised to see if I use 2 video cards, it's going to throttle both of them to 8x. But that's just, like you said, kind of a limitation of the Intel road. I wonder if AMD allows you to stay to 16. I mean, that's 32. That's a lot of lanes right there.
Yeah.
So
yeah, it certainly is. And then of course, like you said, I'm usually pretty up to date when it comes to like display standards and HDMI, 3.1 and or 2.1 or whatever. I did not hear anything about the PCIe Gen 4. So that looks like something. Do you know when these are supposed to start rolling out? Maybe sometime next year?
I think sometime next year. Yeah, the next generation of Intel chips is going to handle PCI 4 Gen 4, and that ups the number of bus lanes that you've got, so you can cram more in there. And these new chipsets, I think they're calling it the 590, and I would go for the Z version, the C590. Most of them actually have 10 gigabit on board, which will save some of the headache of throwing a card in, and a couple of Intel RAID, and it's kind of funny. The more cars you have on the road, the slower everything goes, but also the more crashes you get.
Yeah.
And I can't tell you how many of my Zoom recordings for my classes has me, everything coming down and me having to restart. So hopefully, so far in the last couple of weeks, I've been more stable than before. So between Windows and this reconfiguring on the motherboard, I think something's taken better.
I'm glad to hear it. I mean, we had some issues here as well, but they were. I think we're chalking them up to Windows and Windows updates. Windows can. It's like having really long pants, like bell bottoms. They drag a lot of dirt, and you end up getting a lot of crud on your pants. You got to change them every now and then. I mean, I totally get it. Like, the fact that in the operating system like Windows, because, with Apple and their Mac OS, that whole thing runs on one set of hardware that they make. That's perfect. But for Windows, for Windows to work as well as it does on the wide amount of hardware that it does,
absolutely.
You can expect some mess, but yeah,
absolutely. I mean, it's pretty amazing what you can do. I mean, that's why OS X is so stable. It's fit in that walled off garden, and
it's fit in that walled off. And really, it's fit into that walled off garden, and I've seen Craig deal with this. That walled off garden, and then like it's like a walled back garden as well. They don't even like guarantee that like if your hardware is like, you know, he had an iMac from like 2011, and around like 2017, 2018, support just shut down completely. They're like, well, yeah, technically it still works, but too bad. Upgrade to the new stuff. Like they don't even care if you're in their ecosystem. You have to be current too.
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, with Windows, it's so much more of a DIYer's way to go, and I can almost slap anything into this thing and configure it however I want in a case that I want with the kind of drives that I want, and everything is so fits exactly how I want to go. But it comes at the cost of doing a lot of Googling and spending a lot of nights looking stuff up and downloading this and trying that. So it's a trade-off. But for me, you know, how else am I going to spend my time, right?
Well, you know, one would argue with your family and loved ones, but yeah, I totally get that. Going down the Wikipedia rabbit hole is also equally as fun. So, which we're actually going to do a little bit of that ourselves, looking through our different topics here. You know, when you're going to upgrade, I mean, you said you're going to put off maybe a little bit longer, but you know, I'm right there with you. Like, my CPU is still pretty good. I'm still running like a 4.7 gigahertz, like i7 something or other like that. It's pretty good. It's like an 8800K or something like that, whatever. But like CPU is okay. Although we're going to talk about some of the AMD recent CPUs and how they are dominant in the field, like, you know, more dominant than Intel used to be. So, but the graphics cards, oh my God, I'm like 3 or 4 generations behind, and I'm so jealous of the 3090s. They're the 3080s and the 3090s. They look so good.
Yeah. I really want to get my hands on an RTX enabled card so I can do a lot of testing and
they
my
have
feelers out there, but nothing's coming back.
They're so backlogged. I think that we're going to talk a little bit about the AMD RX 6800 and 6800 XT. They said that those graphics cards are going to be backed up probably the next 2 months, and of course the current generation, 3080s and 3090s from Nvidia are backed up. Like, it's a scalper's paradise out there between consoles and GPUs. Scalpers are making a killing right now.
Yeah, agreed.
Yeah.
But yeah, we just, I guess, wait until the new thing comes out, and all the stuff that we want right now is going to end up being available. But then we'll want that new thing, so it never ends, right?
I think that Nvidia has hit that plateau that they're going to be pretty even keel for the next year or two. They're going to come out next year with something, a little bit better. But I think Nvidia has kind of hit that spot that it's safe to upgrade. Intel, they're promising that, this upcoming CPU, still on the 14 nanometer, sadly, and that should be released sometime in 2021. And I think they said the generation after that, all things considered, hopefully it works, 10 nanometer. Whereas, famously AMD's been on 7 nanometer, and Apple just came out with their 5 nanometer MacBook Pros and Apple Minis, or whatever you call the little square one. Seems like everyone else seems to have, really kind of shrunk their die size, and Intel is still playing catch up, but they should soon.
Yeah, they're having a lot of trouble with that die size right now.
Yeah. And Carissa, I know that you know exactly what it means when you shrink a die size and the performance increase you get from that.
Yep.
All right, perfect. So, but for everyone who is not Carissa, the reason that, I kind of went through, I said all that and why that makes sense is that when you shrink a die size, you increase efficiency, you increase performance per kind of the size of the chip that you're using. There's less heat generated, so that means you have less cooling issues, which means that you can run at a higher voltage or the same voltage, more efficient, and everything just runs that much better when you're able to shrink it down. And again, Intel just hasn't been able to do that lately, but they're hoping to do so soon, which is why I'm hoping I can hold out until they nail the 10 nanometer. Although I have an article here that I sent to you as well, Dariush and Carissa, about the best CPUs by Tom's Hardware. And this list, I found it very funny because at the very top, they kind of show a, best CPUs for 2020. About 2 weeks ago, they put this out. And yeah, they have best gaming processors at a glance. And if anyone out there can actually read this on my screen.
Yeah, it's crazy.
Yeah, you can see right there, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6. And it's Ryzen 597535, all Ryzen. Dariush, what do you think about that? And again, CPU specific.
Yeah, I think it's great. I mean, Ryzen made a huge splash, and it got Intel to kind of move its plans up a little bit. But, Intel should have been on a smaller die size last year, or at least 2 years, maybe even.
Yeah.
To get the next level of performance, because you're right. As soon as that die size decreases, you get an order of magnitude better performance because of that efficiency and cooling capacity. So AMD seems to have kind of hit that sweet note, but as soon as Intel does, then I think we'll be back to where we were, where Intel was consistently coming in above the AMD chips. But you never know. AMD's doing really, really well with CPUs and with graphics cards lately, which I know we'll get to a little bit later.
Yeah, there were even rumors as far back as March that the Zen 4, so like we're still on like the Zen 3 architecture from AMD. The Zen 4, which is due out sometime next year, should be on the 5 nanometer. So they're even shrinking, they're going to be half the die size of Intel by next year. So I know that Intel has famously blamed it on production issues. They've replaced some of the higher ups. Hopefully, everything starts catching back up. But I'm still waiting for that. But real quick, Dariush, I mean, in your own research, I know that there used to be some compatibility issues and some performance losses when you mixed, let's say, an AMD CPU with an Nvidia GPU. It was always Intel, Nvidia, or just AMD and AMD. Do you know if those are still a thing, or has everyone kind of come to terms with it and everything just works whatever you use?
Yeah, I don't think it's much of an issue. It's not something I've kept my finger on the pulse of, but it's not something that's really come up in any of my readings and research. So I think it's fair to say you can mix and match and not have to stay AMD, or Intel and Nvidia. I've run plenty of Intel workstations with AMD graphics in them, so I don't think it's a huge deal.
Yeah, I'm looking here and I'm not seeing any, really any issues with this. I shouldn't trust Quora. That's a horrible place to ask questions. But yeah, it's looking like you can mix and match the both. Looks like they know how to talk to each other. And at this point, I would probably be, kind of on board to do that. Even in this post though, like every single, like in the number 1, they have the Ryzen 5 5600X where they kind of balance performance and cost and all that kind of thing. And also, hey, speak of the devil, supports PCIe 4 here on the AMD Ryzen 5 5600X. But then their alternative is, of course, the Core i5 10600K, which, I think most things are still optimized for Intel just because Intel has been dominant for so long. That's what most game developers and other software makers have been kind of aiming for. But they work on both. Like, it can be designed for one, but then optimized on both, which I think they do. So, but yeah, I think if I were to build a new computer, and of course, as people, I said way at the beginning, if we're going to throw in some holiday tips here, if people are looking at new computers, you would say that anything with an AMD in it is CPU wise is going to be, kind of a fair purchase. Right. So there's that. And then, of course, I know I asked you this last year, but Dariush, it's been a whole year. Pre-built or build it yourself? I know which one you would do, but for the average person out there, do you trust pre-builds?
Yeah, absolutely. I've got my wife set up on a pre-built Ryzen, actually, from a couple of years ago, and it's doing fine. It's from, I forget who it's from, CyberPower.
Yeah.
They built a nice machine. It's been stable. I've been rendering on it. She's been running her classes on it. So no complaints on the pre-built. I haven't really gotten to the guts and really personalized that
Right.
box at all. So, but I can. You can totally do that with these pre-builts.
Right. Carissa, I know that you and Aaron are normally pretty hands-on when it comes to your computers. Have you tinkered with your computer? Like the last time I heard Aaron tinker with his computer, he drug his feet on the floor and immediately zapped his brand new CPU. That was the last thing I heard about Aaron and him dealing with his his computer, where he just burnt out his new chip. Have you opened up your computers lately? Have you been playing around with them?
Well, he just opened up the big computer again and did something to the fan that was on the motherboard. So we swapped that one back out because when we had purchased that was secondhand, the aftermarket rather, kind of crapped out because he's been doing calculations on it.
Yeah.
But I actually, when I got my laptop a few months ago, I got an MSI gaming laptop. I don't remember if it was the CP, like the graphics card or a different card, but I swapped something out in it and it works really great. So I need to go back into the past and see what it was that I changed because I don't remember, but I did do that.
Very, very cool. Yeah, it's and I think for everyone out there, retrofitting, like Dariush said, going in and personalizing it and just upgrading pieces here and there, seems to be the way to go for a lot of computers. That's last time I tinkered with my computer.
Money too.
Yeah. Oh yeah, for sure. The last time I tinkered with my computer, new motherboard, new CPU, and a new SSD. One of those M.2s. That was it, and it's been running strong ever since. I highly recommend that. So with that being said, okay, so AMD processors, we talked about that. Intel famously, yeah. So Dariush, it's since you last been on, I think, did we miss October with you? I think we did.
I think so, yeah.
Yeah. So since October, though, Nvidia has released their 3090, 3080, and those have kind of gone up for sale since then. I think they're still sold out for a good long while. And
good
AMD,
luck getting one.
Yeah, exactly. And AMD has released their. I think it's like the AMD actually just went on sale today. RX 6000 series graphics cards, the 6800 and the 6800 XT. And so both of these, let's do NVIDIA first. And what did you think of NVIDIA and kind of what they've been showing off performance-wise? This is the second generation of ray tracing capable cards. Real-time ray tracing.
These are fantastic. I think the 3070 or 3080 was coming in definitely much faster than the previous generation 2080. So there's a big performance boost there. The ray tracing, as we all know, that's really the next best improvement in graphics quality in games and stuff. So that's a technology that I would chase. Now, it doesn't need to be specifically stuck to NVIDIA RTX. I know AMD's working on that as well, but they're tremendous cards. I've read a few reports about how some of the OEMs or the partners, the manufacturing partners, there's varying levels of quality in some of the components that they're using. So some people are having some issues with their 3080, 3070 cards with the capacitor quality that they're using around the actual GPU varies.
Really?
And that's part of the cost. So some cards are able to hit overclocking, other cards are not, and they won't go very far over. Others are causing some stability issues. And I think it's come down to some of those, I think they're the capacitor chips that are causing the issues.
That's the RTX 3080 capacitor. issue. And yeah, this auto-completed for me right there. EVGA confirms NVIDIA RTX 3080 cards capacitor caused crashes. Previous report by the website's gentleman, the capacitors as the likely culprit behind crashes, instability, and black screens. So looks like EVGA in particular, I'm not seeing, Gigabyte looks like also issued one. So yeah, a few of the different manufacturers, and yeah, very, very, I did not hear about that, but I guess it's not that widespread, hopefully.
It's not terribly widespread. There's a pretty good video about it. I'm gonna link in the
Sure.
chat there that talks a little bit about that issue. It's good to learn a little bit more about the type of chip that they're using. Saves money, and it really you don't know what you're going to get. And some of these bloggers have actually had to take the heat sinks off and take a look at the chips being used to identify, okay, these brands, these model numbers have the more inferior chips.
Yeah.
And it's a really interesting teardown.
Yeah, man, tearing down one of the most sought after graphics cards, necessary. Yeah, I mean, that's what these guys have these huge YouTube channels for, but still hurts a little bit. Yeah, it does. That could be that could be powering someone's video game. But yep, I definitely see it here. We'll include it in the show notes so everyone can go out there. And yeah, it looks like he's definitely getting in depth and very, very well produced video. So for sure. Other than those few cards, and I would say that they're going to make it right, but I'm sure they don't even have the stock to make it right. Man,
Not yet.
And of course, AMD and Nvidia both get kind of penalized for this all the time. They're like, same thing with like the Nintendo Switch and the PlayStation and Microsoft consoles. I mean, they're like, why don't you just make enough for demand? You know how much the demand is going to be. You never meet demand, and I think that Nvidia rolled out, since you were last on Dariush, they were rolling out things like anti-bot, like CAPTCHAs at the checkout line, stuff like that, so that bots can come in and just buy, 100 cards at a time. They started adding, things like, 2 graphics cards per purchase and things like that. It didn't really stop anything. I mean, there are still bots that get around it and purchase these things ahead of time, but
yeah.
Man, the supply issue is always so apparent at the very beginning.
It is, and it kind of bit me on the butt when I was trying to get a new PlayStation for my son for Christmas.
I'm guessing that didn't work?
I had it in my cart. I was able to add it in my cart, but I just couldn't get to checkout. It kept stalling. Finally, when I got to the checkout, it was sold out and wouldn't sell it to me. So I was like, oh, come on.
I'll take you even one further. I did hear a story about a young lady who went to the store to purchase one in person. And she went there. She had it in her cart. She turned around for 1 second. Someone actually took it out of her cart. It just kind of goes to show that like you have to like take that thing and just like bear hug it all the way to the checkout line. Those consoles are super, super sought after. And you're going with the PS5, or of course for your son.
Yeah, my son's been on PS4, so he's this is what he wants to get. He's been saving up his money to get it. We're helping him buy it for Christmas.
Very cool.
So his call, it's going to be the PS5. It's in his room. So that's that. The line has been drawn with that one. But a buddy of mine has been on PS4 for a long time, and he's switching to the Xbox with the next generation. And he just bought one and should be getting it by the end of this week.
Yeah, the latest Xbox. I mean, we just did a public service announcement about the new Xbox, Carissa, the other day, where Microsoft had to put out a note saying, do not blow your vape smoke into your Xbox console. That is bad for the console. So, and
heads up, in case you didn't know.
Exactly. The whole joke behind that was that people were trying to make it look like it was on fire, and they were taking pictures of vape smoke coming out of there. out of their Xbox consoles, and kind of not working very, very well. So
yeah, well, I mean, it's tiny droplets of moisture. It's a vapor, and that will short. I remember once I was trying to clean out a PSU I had, and the computer was still running, and I blew one of those compressed air cans.
yeah.
And it blew a couple of ice crystals in there and blew the whole PSU. It was a PC Power and Cooling PSU too. It was a really nice power supply.
Yeah.
This is years ago, but I was like, okay, that was dumb. That was dumb.
You know what's still a mistake that I see people make whenever we talk about the latest gadgets and tech and all this kind of stuff. This is a low tech tip for anyone out there. I see it so often. Everyone that grabs one of those cans of compressed air or condensed air, whatever, to those kind of dusters in a can. Dariush, I see every single person grab them, shake it, and then spray.
Yeah, don't shake it, and don't spray it upside down either.
Yeah, don't do either one of those. But yeah, shaking it, I mean, that is kind of what gives you that compressed air, is the fact that it's, you're forcing all of that cold, I think it's like liquid nitrogen or whatever it is. You're forcing all of that cold at the bottom, and it's, kind of as it evaporates and expands, it's forcing the air up into the compressed can and out the little nozzle. Yeah. If you shake it up, you're mixing those gases all together. Yeah, first of all, you can blow up sensitive electronics like that, like Dariush was just saying. But also, you get less compressed air when you shake it up. Just hold it at like a 90 level angle, and just steady stream. No need to shake.
And you shake it or hold it upside down, you get a lot of the propellant that comes out, and that's what's gonna burn your power supply. Lesson well learned. Yeah,
your power supply, your skin, and overall just reduce the lifespan of your canned air. So yeah, little tip there. Don't shake it. It's not like a cleaning bottle or kind of Lysol or something like that. It's no.
Probably like a muscle memory at this point. You pick up a can, you shake it. Except for obviously like soda cans, you don't do that. But
right.
Cleaning stuff, you're usually like, oh, let me get the sediment off of this.
Exactly. Not for that one. So okay. So that aside, I think we were talking about the graphics cards, and there were shortages, but if you can happen to get your hands on one, I was looking at these benchmarks, and again, we're going to include Tom's Hardware again. They did all this testing here, but the 3090, they did benchmarks for these, and number one, they're giving it to the 3080, number two, the 3090, and I think the reason for that is right here on the screen. But the 3080 looks very, very capable. 3090 is clearly better, but I don't think that Tom's Hardware, and I think a lot of people can kind of agree that it's better, but is it $800 better? And
right.
Not a lot of people can make that. Darius, you can, of course, with the workloads that you're talking, that you deal with, and for work and that kind of thing, where time is money, and for a business or anything like that, then yeah, it makes sense. But for an enthusiast, a gamer, anything like that, that's a steep price point to go up just a little bit.
That's a lot of money. Yeah, it's a lot of money for the pride of having 11 more frames per second.
Yeah, but hey, you're gonna have those over anyone else that happens to have one. So RTX 3080, 3090, and then of course after that they also say 3070, which you save like $200. Though I think that's a decent upgrade. The RTX 3070 to 80 is probably worth it.
Yeah, I mean, for $200, that's a big difference between the two of them. Yeah. I would definitely say go to the 80 if you can.
Yeah, for sure. And of course from there they go to although this article was put out, this article was put out 2 weeks ago. In those 2 weeks, again, the RX, not the RTX, the RX 6800 and the 6800 XT, there we go, have come out since. And did you get a chance to look at these specs? I have this article here. I didn't really get kind of a full overview of how much better performance we're looking at here. I have it right here on the screen. Nothing really stands out. I mean, I think Nvidia is also working with 7 nanometers, so that's nothing. It looks just capable.
Yeah, I mean, I think they're hitting their usual middle high level cards, and for AMD, it's always been more about the price to performance compared to the more premium cost of the Nvidia cards. 5700 is, you can see on that list, number 4. But there's a sizable difference between the 3070 and the 5700 XT.
Yeah.
Terms of price, it's about $100 more, but you're getting about 30, I should say, frames per second more out of the 3070. So, I think the RX has to do a little bit better to compete with the RTX cards in that way. But, price wise, I would have thought the 3070 was going to be more around the 600 to 700.
Mm-hmm.
Thought that's where it was going to start, with the 3080 hitting at about a grand, and the 3090 being, 1500 is crazy.
Yeah.
But I like the fact that NVIDIA's brought their pricing structure down a little bit, and that makes it more compelling to go into the RTX over even the newer RX cards. But I'd like to see something, faster than the 5700 and see how that stacks up.
Well, yeah,
price.
and of course the faster than the 5700 is this one, the 6800 and the 6800 XT, and they mentioned that they showed one thing here that they're really touting that I was just trying to read about real quick was this AMD Smart Access Memory that they're promising. They said that AMD Smart Access Memory and Rage Mode, AMD Smart Access Memory is what AMD is calling its implementation of the feature that is part of the PCIe spec called resizable bar. This allows AMD processors to access the entire pool of memory attached to a Radeon RX 6000 series GPU over its PCIe 4 interface when used on compatible motherboard and chipset. They said that they will always have the ability to peek into some portion of the GPU's memory, but Smart Access Memory grants processors full access, which can improve performance with some workloads. For now, support is enabled on a handful of the 5000 series, but will be coming to more in the future. It sounds like it's almost like adaptive memory, and depending on what workload and with AMD and Intel, AMD in particular, those benchmarks that we keep seeing, they're always under certain conditions, under certain stress, under certain load, under certain processes. And it looks like AMD is going with the Smart Access Memory is going even further on the kind of multi-thread, multi-process, kind of multi-program, kind of performance. It seems like AMD expects you to be running, 12 things in the background when you're running one of its GPUs, and it's going to be able to handle all of those. They're hoping.
Parallel processing is the best way to increase your efficiency. That's why when, a lot of the rendering tasks that I have really boost when you've got lots of threads running. But the main application, Maya, that I'm working in doesn't handle that many threads. I wish it did, but at render time, huge difference. That's where the dividends pay off. So there's something to be said for that.
So, and I kind of glossed over the other one. That was the Smart Access Memory, where it's going to adapt and change and shift, and that'll be great for, kind of conserving your power and heat and that kind of thing. But then the other one is Rage Mode. Think about in video games, when you go Rage Mode, all bets are off. It's all offense, no defense. And that seems to be what they're kind of saying here, where AMD has had this profile built into the motherboard this entire time. It's like the high performance mode where, kind of, hey, if it crashes because it melts, it crashes because it melts. They're going to be able to turn that on adaptively. And they're saying they're hoping to get a performance increase of 2 to 13% through these graphics cards. 2%, that kind of follows the. Did you notice the PowerPoint presentation that AMD put out like 2 weeks ago, Dariush? Did you get a chance to catch that?
I did not actually. No.
Oh my God, it's boy, it was so disappointing from AMD. Like they were comparing it to Nvidia graphics cards with the RTXs, and I guess because they came out so close to each other, like timeline wise, they tried to show these bar graphs, and like every bar graph was just like 2% equal, 5% increase. There was like no wiggle room for like, look how much we're, trouncing them in this. Everything was just, again, by example here, 2% better than what Nvidia promises. But yeah, rage mode is their way of just saying, it'll use more energy. It'll, put off more heat, but we'll do it adaptively. And hopefully if we're smart enough with it, you won't notice, and you won't, kind of notice any kind of difference other than an improvement in performance.
Yeah.
Which is nice.
So kicking it into overdrive, right?
Yeah.
Basically
yeah. Same thing.
It is, yeah.
Same thing. So that's what they're promising. Let's see. So 6800 XT and the 6800. It goes into all this other, kind of materials and stuff used and all that good stuff. It looks to be on par with the it looks to be on par with the Nvidia 3080. The price point, you're looking at $649 for the XT and $579 for the regular 6800. So I would say that the performance again is probably on par, $50 cheaper, and it's definitely a lot cheaper than like the 3070, but I think it would outperform the 3070 as well. So, $50 difference.
So too, yeah.
$50 difference though. If you have a clear preference for AMD or Nvidia, I don't think you can go wrong if you're looking at the 6800 XT versus the Nvidia 3080.
Yeah, and keep in mind the RX, at least the 6900 XT supports ray tracing.
Mm-hmm.
And whether it uses the same, or I should say, whether it enjoys the same level of support in the software as the RTX does right now, that goes without saying. But remember back in the day of OpenCL and CUDA cores, with compute, same sort of thing is going to happen here. But I hope that the developers are able to capitalize so that you're not locked into one architecture or the other, and that you can have ray tracing no matter what in your game regardless. You have to buy specific AMD version of it. But I mean, we're on the second generation, at least with the Nvidia ray tracing. So I think in my mind, that seems a little bit more the way to go over this right now, at least. But
and
it's still pretty cutting edge.
I've been watching a lot of gameplay of the new Demon's Souls remake that came out for like PlayStation 3, a decade ago, and they came out with Demon's Souls for the PlayStation 5. PlayStation 5 is promising ray tracing, and here's a quick little image of it here. But it's, oh my God, it's made the game look so much better. Yes, I'm old enough, I promise. I'm from 1900. Probably, or 1990, that does. So yeah, and we're going to show this image here in the background of what kind of it's going to look like with the ray tracing and the graphics. But Dariush, I think that they heard you. You won the fight. They're even including it in next gen consoles. Spider-Man was another good example of what ray tracing kind of does. Have you seen it? Oh yeah, and sorry to step on you here real quick, but have you seen any of the recent games? I know that obviously you're shopping for a PlayStation 5. Have you seen anything recent that you were like, wow, that looks really, really good?
I haven't. I've had my tunnel vision set with
all
my
work no play,
and finishing out the exactly. So I've just gotten back on playing a little bit of Destiny. But aside from that, I haven't touched a game for months.
The new Destiny expansion came out. I I want to say it was like
Yeah, was
Beyond
it
Light.
like $90 or $60 or
It was
not
$70.
cheap.
It was $70.
$70.
For an
Yeah.
expansion?
Yeah.
Yeah.
I think like $10 of that, if I'm not mistaken, was like a season pass, quote unquote, where essentially if you don't buy it, then you have to buy it later. But yeah, the full fledged thing was like $70. But hey, I've heard good things. And for those who don't, I mean, this is just a complete aside, but I think like next week, if you subscribe to Stadia, yeah, all four of you, then it's free on Google Stadia, however you say that. So yeah, fun fact there. But anyways, Demon Souls, I mean, this one that we have kind of playing in the background, I you know, the way that the light reflects off the walls and all that kind of thing. I even saw like there's the new WoW expansion coming out, and they've been working with AMD pretty closely, and they're doing something with like ocular occlusion and something about surface lighting and things like that. The way light behaves in video games seems to have taken, like before it was like, here, check out our physics. Here's how, you know, all of this works. Now it's all about lighting for some reason. I don't know what changed.
I think it's the realization that they should listen to me. And for the past couple of years on this show, I've been talking about how ray tracing is the next quality level to achieve, no matter how good the physics are. And the physics are fine. There's a limit to how much better they're going to make the game look. But you get beautiful lighting, you get beautiful God rays and beautiful reflections and real sort of refractions and caustic effects, and that's going to feel much nicer because the materials on the characters, you know, the skin and the cloth and the metal, are just going to look better when they're ray traced. And actually, the article that I just linked to in the chat,
I see that.
is
yeah,
comparison between the RX 6800 XT versus the RTX Nvidia cards. And where ray tracing is disabled, where it's off, it holds its own. The RX card holds its own with a 3080. So in that way, it's a really good competitor. But as soon as you throw ray tracing on for, I'm sure, quite a few reasons, it lags behind quite a bit. And I think part of that is just the development support is not there. And RTX was out of the gate, so their instruction set, I guess, is being used more efficiently. So, you know, this is something that's all conjecture at this point. But second gen, I would wait on a PlayStation 5 if it was me until the next year and not get the first generation. I feel that way about a lot of technology, but I understand people want to get it right now, and I think the RTX holds a lead in that.
Yeah, I'm definitely seeing where you're talking about. Where you know, let's take this one. Let's see, not this one for instance, where Far Cry New Dawn settings, you know, in 4K. I mean, between the 3090 and the 6800 XT, which, you know, these two cards. I mean, there's a what is that? There's about like an $800 difference between these two cards, and nothing about ray tracing here. Just, you know, ultra settings 4K. Yeah, minimum, and of course the other one comes out by like 10 frames, but I would sacrifice 10 frames for $800. That's you know, that's totally worth
it. Absolutely. You can buy a new CPU for that.
Yeah, it's they're so close, and then of course, you know, ray trace shadows and things like that. That's where obviously way down here the RX 6800 XT, you're looking at 29 frames per second compared to 69. I mean, that's was that like 110% or 120% performance increase. Yeah, ray tracing alone seems to be it. And like you said, with like CUDA cores and OpenCL and things like that, I'm hoping that Nvidia makes it kind of standard and open source so that AMD can get in on it. But it's at this point, and if I recall correctly, I think it's a matter of like hardware support. Like AMD would have to engineer the way that they build their cards to utilize RTX. So maybe that might not happen, but they can find another way to do it. I mean, they're very smart over there. So
Oh, sure. I mean, they're doing it already. It's just
Yeah.
I don't think it's optimized and it's not developed as much as the RTX has been. So I would revisit this in about a year
Hmm.
or so to see where the Nvidia cards stack up and how well they're being supported in ray tracing.
But like I said, a lot of video game manufacturers and a lot of the people who work on the engine behind a lot of the things you're seeing, they're adopting RTX. I don't know if that's Nvidia leveraging their massive leverage and making people do it, but they're
Well, I mean,
yeah
that's the next evolution. They have to. I mean, if
Yeah.
they want their games to be competitive, this
Well,
is where they need to go. They need to support ray tracing, and RTX was the first available thing out there that people glommed onto, and AMD's playing catch up.
right. And I'm trying to find the article right now from this, and it had to do with AMD. And here we go. FidelityFX. Have you heard of that technology?
I have not.
From AMD. So, and of course, they're talking about AMD working with World of Warcraft Shadowlands. WoW's been out for like 15 years or 16 years. It's not the most current one, but they are updating their graphics all the time. And with Shadowlands, I think they're taking the opportunity to really hey, they're hoping to push the envelope for what they can hope people have hardware-wise. And one thing that they're really working with AMD on is FidelityFX, Combined Adaptive Compute Ambient Occlusion, which is a new implementation of screen space ambient occlusion. And so, they're talking about what it is, switching to it, all that kind of thing. Essentially, what they're saying here is that overall, the latent ambient occlusion is the concept in graphics where the overall lightness affecting a surface and environment is diminished by the presence of other nearby surfaces. These other surfaces block or occlude some of the non-directional scattered light in the scene, reaching the affected surface. So it's not even like, the light's over here in this corner and it's shining on everything over here. It's that, half of it's going to be blocked by this bookcase. So the lighting is going to look differently. That's not RTX, but it's almost RTX-like. It's still going to give you the same effects.
Yeah, what ambient occlusion is really good for is bringing out detail in crevices and contact shadows and adding just a little bit more weight to the lighting of something by bringing out little lines and little corners and crevices and stuff like that. It's fake. It's not a real lighting phenomenon,
right?
But one of the first widespread uses of it in the industry was on Sony's film Monster House.
Yeah,
which is I don't know how many years ago, but I remember interviewing for being a lighting artist on that, and they were talking about, well, we're going to be using a lot of ambient occlusion in here, and that really helped the film have a more of a solid feel without lots and lots of processing. So it's a fake, sort of a fake process, but I mean we've been using it in graphics for quite a long time. Gives you a nice black and white. It's also called a dirt map. It's really good for subtle detail.
Right. And by the way, 2006. I can't believe it's been that long. I remember when Monster House came out.
Wow.
Yeah, time flies. Time flies when you're having fun, which we can even speak to that a little bit. That we have about a minute left here on the show, so not long at all. Looking through my other topics I had here. So, anyways, RTX 3080 versus the new AMD one that they just put out. If you don't give two toots about RTX or ray tracing or anything like that, or if you play something that doesn't really utilize it, although why are you buying the latest graphics card if you're not doing that, then AMD is perfectly good to go. But ray tracing seems like more and more games, especially over the next year or two, they're going to come out with it. It's a good time to jump onto Nvidia. That seems to be your feelings, Dariush.
I think right now, I don't think the landscape is wide enough to have a ton of ray tracing games, but if you want to future proof what you're buying, I think RTX is the safer bet for the next 2 years.
Right. So there's that one. And then let's see, some of the other topics I had. I wanted to talk to you about Apple. And, we had this article the other day saying that this one right here from PCWorld saying that, sorry, for some reason, PCWorld took exception to Mac saying that they were faster than 98% of laptops out there. And, they're talking about their new architecture. Did you catch the One More Thing event, Dariush?
Nope.
Perfect.
Did not.
Yeah, so
way too busy lately.
Yeah, they and that was where Apple kind of announced their new silicon that they're working on, and
the M1, right?
Yeah, the M1 with the MacBook Pro, the MacBook Air, and the Apple Mini or the Mac Mini. Apple Mini? Mac Mini, I don't know. Either one
Mac
of those.
Mini,
yeah. So, but we'll know more about that when they're finally released in sometime in 2021. So, if Intel didn't have enough problems, now it looks like Apple's going to get in on the game. Although, to be fair, again, it's only for their hardware. So, yeah, that's about all the time we have here. We'll throw a few more things here in the show notes, but Dariush, that's about it. So I want to thank you so much for joining us here on the show. Next time that we talk to you, it should be towards the end or towards the middle of December. And we'll have one more time to catch up for the holidays. Sounds but have a good Thanksgiving. Hopefully, it all goes smoothly.
You as well. Thank you for having me. Always a pleasure.
Our pleasure. So, Carissa, and of course, hopefully you learned something because I learned, if nothing else, PCIe lanes. So there you go. So, yeah. So, everyone, I want to thank you so much. And, of course, next time, join us here on Computer America, where, just real quick, tomorrow on the program, we should be doing computer and technology news because Marcel Garnier is still quarantining. So, everyone, we'll catch you next time.